Hello and welcome in this new video where we will basically create the mounts or actually the side mounts for our bridge. First of all, what do I mean by side mounts? Well, they are basically these bad boys right here that are supposed to hold everything together. They should be on the ground and they are basically the support for this bridge. And as you can see, they are basically just kinda a shape that is similar to a triangle or a cube, and that's what we will be creating in this video. And the most important thing is that basically for these mounts, I should be later able to, first of all, control how high they are, basically by controlling this, and also they should adapt also to the width, so they shouldn't be always at the same location. They should follow the width, and also I should be able to change their height. And that's exactly what we will be doing in this video. Okay, so let's start working on that. I'm just going to hit N to hide the sidebar, hit N, and yeah, let's start working. So there are multiple ways on how you can create that shape, but just to make everything easier, I'm actually going to go Shift A and let's add a line, which is called curve line, not mesh line. Curve line. I'm not going to see it right now because it is not connected to my output, which is the last node. So in order to see it, let's just hit Control right mouse button to cut this link, and let's just move this bad boy right here just for now, and later on we will move it there. So let's just connect this right here, and if you zoom enough, you will see that we do have this a really tiny line right here, and you will basically be able, first of all, to control where it starts, which is basically from the bottom up, as you can see, and you will also be able to change where it ends, which is from the top. As you can see, I can change its height the way I want. I'm just going to set this to 0, and let's put this to something like 1, let's say. Right now what we need to do is basically to turn this line to the shape we want. So the first thing I'm going to do is to hit resample curve, which will basically subdivide this curve, which is right now basically constructed from only 2 points, one on the top and one on the bottom. I'm going to subdivide it, let's say, to something, let's say like 15 points. So this will give us more freedom when it comes to how we can change the shape of this mount. And after doing that, let's add another node called set curve size, or actually set curve radius, which will allow us to control the radius. It is the exact same technique that we used before to create the ropes, so yeah. And after doing that, let's add the most important node, which is curve to mesh. Let's put it right here, and as you probably remember from the lesson before, is that we need to plug a certain basically profile curve to this line. So in order to create the shape we want, I'm actually going to add a star, which is this star, and it is basically just a simple star that we used to draw in school. And if I just plug it to the profile curve, notice what will happen. Basically, we'll have something looking like this. This is not what I want. First of all, I'm going to bring down the points to something like 3, so it is right now a triangle. And for the inner radius, let's reduce it down to something like 0.3. And for this one, let's do 0.5. And you will get a result looking like so. And probably it is empty from the top, so make sure to check fill cap so that you can fill it from the top and the bottom. Right now, I need to tell Blender that, hey, Blender, I want you basically to make the upper part slimmer than the lower part. And to do this, you can basically, we do have this radius input right here, which basically if we tell Blender that, hey, on the top, we want you to do 0.4, and on the bottom, just maybe, let's say, keep it at 1. Now that's actually super simple. Here's what we will do. I'm going to hit Shift A and look for map range. I'm going to put it right here. And also I'm going to look for another node, which is called spline controller, or actually spline parameter. I'm going to explain what does this node do right now, but just bear with me. I'm going to connect this to the radius. And as you can see right now, for whatever reason, whenever I try to change these values, they simply doesn't work the way I want them to work. And actually there is a reason for that. Because here's the thing, Blender right now doesn't know what is up and what is down. And basically when, for example, we will tell him to scale something down, he might scale it in the middle, he might scale it on the top, or maybe on the bottom. Blender doesn't have any idea on what is up and what is down. That's why we do have have this spline parameter, which will give Blender a couple of information about how we want to transform this thingy that we do have. And you will have this thing called factor. And factor is basically, if I just plug the factor to the radius so that you know what it does, notice what will happen. Basically, what the factor looks like is basically imagine it like some sort of a gradient, or let's say a line that will start from 0, a radius of 0. That's why on the bottom it is 0, and it will basically go from 0 up to 1. And that's exactly what's happening right now. The upper part is still the same size, which is 1 meter, and for the bottom part it is 0. So basically the factor is just converting all of that to an interval of 0 to 1, and that's why we're getting this shape. It starts from 0, which is basically no radius, and it will basically just get bigger and bigger the more we basically get closer to 1. That's exactly what's happening. So let's cut this link, control right mouse button, and let's connect this to value and plug this to the map range. Nothing will change right now, but notice what will happen when, let's say, bring this down to 0, and let's start changing the 2 max value. Notice what will happen. I will basically be able to change the radius of the upper part the way I want, and for this video I'm actually going to put it for something like 0.5, and this will give me the result you're seeing right now. And probably it is about time to see how the whole thing is looking. So let's just bring this bad boy back right here, and let's connect this to this. Right now I should probably be seeing the ropes, and that's not what I want. I want to join this, basically the ropes, also with the mounts. So to do this I need to join this node with this node. And how can I join nodes? Well, by adding a join geometry node, but they are really far. That's why I'm going to use the shortcut, which is Control Shift, and let's bring over both of these two nodes and release, and this will basically add a join geometry that is combining all of these different elements. And as you can see, our mounts right now is here. Now will come probably the trickiest thing about this video, which is that basically Blender added this element in the center of the scene. We need to tell Blender that, hey Blender, we want you to put this wherever the ropes are, which means we want you basically to put it right here, and adapt to the changes. Whenever we want to change basically the position of the ropes, also the mouse should move with them. And let's build this procedural system. It is not that complicated. So here's the logic of what we will be doing. Every curve we're working with inside of Blender is constructed based on points. That means that we do have a point right here, we will have another point right here, another point right here. I'm not gonna do the whole thing, and we will have a point right here. So in a logical way, if we tell Blender that, hey Blender, first of all, we want you to put the mounts basically on this point right here and on this point right here. That's what we want Blender to do. And at the same time, we also want you to move, for example, in our case, the upper part of that amount, we want you to put it on that point, and basically, and the bottom should be on this point. If we can figure out a way of how to translate these thoughts and these ideas and these concepts to Blender using nodes, we will be ready to go. And yeah, it is not that complicated if you just focus a little bit. So here's what we will be doing. We need to tell Blender to put these mounts, these ones, on these points. So there is a really handy node called instances on points, which is this one, and I'm just going to plug it right here. Basically, what does this node will do, it will tell Blender to put a certain element on a certain point. The points are the things coming from the curve, not from the mounts. So that's why this should go to instance. The instance is the thing that we want to put on the points. I will say it again. The instance are the things that you want to put on the points. And basically we need to tell Blender what are the points, where do we want to put all of these elements. Well, easy enough. They are basically the thing that is coming out of this join geometry node right here. Because this join geometry, it is the one responsible on creating the main two ropes, these ones. It is as simple as basically taking this and let's plug it to points, and notice what will happen. Basically right now we created all of these mounts on every point. If you remember, we subdivided these original splines or these original curves constructing the lines 40 times. That's why right now we do have 40 different mount, because we told Blender that, hey Blender, in every point put a mount. That's why we do have 40 mounts, but we only want Blender to put them in only one position, which are basically the edges of these ropes. So how can we do that? I mean, if there is just a way of how can we tell Blender, just put it here and put it here. Well, there is a really handy node, and this node is called endpoint selection, which will basically select the endpoints. We want to select the first point and the last point. And if you just take this to the selection, notice what will happen. Boom, we just got this result. Right now we told Blender that, hey Blender, put it on the first point and on the last point. If we wanted to put it, for example, only on the last 2 points, I will bring this to 2, and it will select 2 points from the end. If I bring this to 2, also it will select 2 points from the beginning. And same thing, we only wanted 1 here and 1 here. And just by doing this, we basically told Blender to put them on these positions. The last problem that we need to address right now is that they are really short, and we need to figure out a way of how we can control the height of these mounts. Easy enough. The only setting that we need to change when it comes to that is basically if we change the end Z, which will basically control how high these mounts are. Let's say they should be 5 meters, and I need to control this value from here so that basically I don't need every single time to get back to my geometry node. So to do this, let's for example, let's go to our group input and let's hit N to open the side menu, and let's add another input and let's call it mounts height. I think that this makes sense. And let's plug this to this node, to the end, because that's what we want to control. And we will have the setting right here. But here's the problem. As you probably remember, all of these values will be applied to the different axes, the X, Y, and Z. But we only want to apply it only on the Z axis. That's why we need to tell Blender that, hey, we want you only to apply this value right here, only on the Z axis, which, as you probably remember, or actually should remember, we can do that using a combine XYZ. Let's put it right here, and we will tell Blender that apply this value only on the Z axis. And when you change right now this, as you can see, you will be able to change the height of these mounts from here. And I think it looks super neat. Let's set it to 5, and I kind of like this result. And the last thing I might actually do is to add a couple of subdivision to make all of these mounts a little bit smoother. Let's put this 5.5. And at the last node right here, before basically, or actually after the instance on point, I'm going to add another node called subdivision surface, which basically does the same exact thing as the subdivision surface modifier. So I'm just going to put it here, and let's maybe set the levels to 2, and maybe you can bring this edge crease a little bit up until it looks something just like, let's say 0.3, or let's change the type here to keep corners. Keep boundaries, keep boundaries. Let's bring this down, let's bring this up, nope. Let's bring this to something like so. Edge crease, let's say 0.3. Well, that's not bad at all. Maybe also change this to all. And by doing this, we will have this element or all of these nodes that are responsible to control the height of all of these different elements. The last thing I'm just going to do in this video is basically to clean up my node tree a little bit so I don't get lost later on. So control space bar to maximize our editor. I don't like this link going throughout this whole canvas. So just hit shift to create a rerouting node. Shift right mouse button actually. Shift right mouse button to create another rerouting node, and let's put it here. This is looking neater, and also I might actually deal with this link going right here because it's kind of distracting. So let's bring both of these two nodes right here and bring this here just like so, and I'm going to do shift right mouse button and drag over these 3 links, and basically they are right now connected like so. Maybe let's bring this here, shift, do this. I think that this is looking pretty good. Join geometry, let's put this here. And yeah, maybe I should also actually start labeling my nodes so I know exactly what does each group of nodes do. So I'm going to select all of these nodes, hit Ctrl G to create a label, hit F2 to rename it, and let's call this mounts. Also, you can change probably the settings for this under the tool, not node. Yeah, under the node, and under the properties, you can change the size. Let's say something, let's say the maximum size, which is 64. So I will always know that this is the mount. Let's say 50, so it can be visible. And let's bring these two down so I can see the name. And for these ones right here, these are the nodes that are responsible to, first of all, hit Ctrl G to label them. And I think that these ones are responsible to creating main ropes. And let's bring the scale to something like 50. Perfect. This is our node tree right now. And what we basically did is to create these mounts. And yeah, this bridge is starting to get its main shape. So that's it basically for this video, and I will see you in the next one.